The quiet in the signing chamber stretched on, thick and heavy. The image of the Mansu dominated the dome, a silent, undeniable fact. Ambassador Kalen Var finally broke his gaze from the colossal ship and looked at Kim Jia. The patronizing kindness was gone from his eyes. What remained was a sharp, calculating respect and a deep, humbled shock. He did not speak to her. Instead, he turned and gave a low, quick command in his own language to one of his aides. The aide hurried out, their robes swishing. Var then walked slowly to the viewing port, his back to the humans, and stared at the real space view. The progenitor's grace was oriented so Neptune filled one side. On the other side, visible now as a dark shape blotting out the stars, was the flank of the human ship. It was like looking out a cottage window at a mountain that had just appeared overnight. A foundation, Var repeated quietly, the word foreign on his tongue. You build not for the next battle, but for the next 10,000 years. We build for survival, on our own terms, Jia said, joining him at the viewport, but keeping a respectful distance. Your accord offers safety within a system. The Mansu is our safety from systems. Var was silent for a long moment. You must understand from our perspective. This is an act of profound secrecy. It suggests a mind geared towards deception, not cooperation. And from our perspective, Jia replied, her voice still calm, your offer, based on a scan of our porch while never asking to see our basement, suggested a mind geared towards control, not cooperation. We both made assumptions. Ours were just better prepared. A flicker of something that might have been rueful understanding passed over Var's iridescent features. The aide returned, carrying a different data slate, this one older, its edges worn. Var took it and scrolled through, his movements slower, more thoughtful. The treaty, he said, not looking up. It is void. It was written for a different species. A species that I see now never truly existed. He finally turned to her. You will not join as a protectorate. It was not a question. Jia nodded once. No, we will not. And you have this? He gestured weakly toward the viewport. This capability. Not just one ship, but the technological base to create it. You are, by any practical measure, an independent interstellar power. A young one, but a real one. We are. Jia agreed. Var took a deep breath, a very human-like gesture. Then the conversation must change. The Accord does not have equal partners. It has senior members and guided members. You do not fit. Then perhaps we initiate a new category, Jia suggested. Or perhaps we do not join the Accord at all. Perhaps we begin a new type of relationship, a treaty between separate powers, mutual defense, scientific and cultural exchange, trade. You would be alone, Var said, but the old warning held no weight now. It was just a statement of fact. G smiled, a real one this time, small and firm. Ambassador, look at that ship. Does it look like it was built by a people who are afraid of being alone? It was built for the alone. It was built for the deep, dark quiet between galaxies. Your company would be welcome, but your patronage is not required. On the dome screen, Captain Li Dihayan's face reappeared. Ambassador Var, Special Envoy, we are detecting a standard query hail from the Accord Central Comms Network. They are requesting clarification on the Mansu's signature. How would you like us to respond? Var closed his eyes for a second. This was the moment. He could escalate. He could report this as a hostile, hidden mobilization. It would cause panic, possibly muster an Accord fleet. It would mean conflict with a species that built foundations as weapons. Or, Captain Li, Var said, opening his eyes and squaring his shoulders, the diplomat reasserting himself. but a different kind of diplomat now. Please transmit the following on my secure authority. Code VAR Theta 7. Message reads, Situation revised. First contact parameters re-evaluated. Human civilization is to be classified as autonomous sovereign entity, effective immediately. Previous treaty draft rescinded. Stand by for new negotiation framework. Send it. The chamber seemed to let out a held breath. The other Accord delegates looked stunned, but also, in a way, relieved. The puzzle had been solved, even if the solution was terrifying. Deihan nodded on the screen. Transmitting. The Munsu will maintain position as a neutral diplomatic venue, if desired. It is desired, Var said, turning back to Jia. The progenitor's grace is ill-suited for the discussions we must now have. Its walls were built for a different conversation. Jia understood. His ship was a symbol of the old, failed assumptions. The Munsu has conference facilities. We would be honored to host. An hour later, a human shuttle, larger than the Harmony, docked with the Munsu. Kim Ji-ah, Dr. Choi Yoon-ji, and Commander Park Ji-hoon transferred over, followed by Ambassador Var and a select few of his staff. The difference was immediate and overwhelming. Where the Accord ship was light and organic, the Munsu was solid and engineered. The corridors were wide, the ceilings high, everything built on a scale that spoke of brute strength and permanent occupancy. The air smelled of metal, ozone, and recycled water. It was not beautiful, but it was immensely, comfortingly real. The conference room they were led to was plain. A large metal table, functional chairs, screens on the walls. A viewport showed the curve of Neptune, and small and elegant in the distance, the progenitor's grace. Var sat, his long frame looking oddly fragile in the utilitarian human chair. He looked around, taking in the sheer, uncompromising practicality of it all. You hid an entire philosophy from us, he said, not with accusation, but with awe. We showed you the face we show everyone, Jia said, sitting opposite him. The hopeful, social, sometimes chaotic face of Earth. This, she tapped the solid table, is the other face. The one that looks at the void and decides to build a wall against it, stone by stone, year by year. The new negotiations began. They did not talk of protectorates or guided integration. They talked of embassies. They talked of shared research into jump drive physics, with the humans offering data from the Munsu's revolutionary displacement system. They talked of trade agreements, human raw materials, and unique biotech for Accord precision instruments and stellar cartography. They talked of a mutual defense pact, not one where the Accord protected Earth, but where each would come to the aid of the other. If attacked by a third, unknown party. It was a conversation between equals. Because the Munsu, hanging outside the window, made it impossible to have any other kind of conversation. As the first session ended, Var stood again at the viewport. We came to offer you a place in our story, he said, his voice soft. And you found us writing our own, Jia finished. He nodded. It is a good story. It has. Wait, he turned to her. There will be suspicion back home. Fear. Some will see your Colossus and see only a threat. And you, Ambassador? Jia asked. Var looked once more at the ship that had changed everything. He saw its armored hull, its city spine, its quiet, massive power. He did not see a weapon pointed at him. He saw a door, newly opened, to a room the Accord never knew existed. I see, he said finally, that we have much to learn from each other. And that the first lesson is this: never underestimate a species that, when offered a helping hand, secretly builds a whole new arm. He offered a human-style handshake, a gesture of true partnership. Shall we begin? Outside, the UNS Munsu and the progenitor's grace hung together in the silent dark, one a mountain, one a jewel. The dialogue between Earth and the stars. Oh. The image on the dome was impossible. It filled the entire view, a sprawling, brutal mass of dark metal and harsh light against the serene backdrop of Neptune. The Uns Monsu did not move with the graceful silence of the Accord ship. It held its position with a kind of gravitational certainty, as if its sheer mass was anchoring that part of space. Small, bright points of light navigation beacons. Observation domes. The mouths of vast thrusters glittered along its surface like stars on a black iron plane dot in the signing chamber. The silence was absolute. It was the silence of a worldview cracking apart. The Accord diplomats were statues. One of the junior aides had dropped a data slate. The sound of it clattering on the smooth floor was like a gunshot, but no one flinched. All eyes were locked on the monster ship, or on the human woman standing calmly before them. Ambassador Kalen Var was the first to break. His voice, when it came, had lost its melodic warmth. It was thin, strained. "What is that?" Special Envoy Kim Jia turned slowly from the screen to look at him. Her face was a polite mask, but her eyes held a cool, new light. "That, Ambassador Var, is the UN's Monsu, a Colossus-Class strategic command vessel. From our lunar shipyards." She said it as if mentioning a new public transit line. A command vessel? Var's words were a whisper of disbelief. That is not a command vessel. That is a mobile battle station. The energy readings, the mass. This is not within your technological profile. Our public technological profile, Jia corrected gently. You scanned our Sentinel. You assessed our orbital grids. Your assessment was logical, based on the data you chose to collect. She took a small step forward, her hands still clasped neatly. But when a child grows up in a dangerous neighborhood, Ambassador, it does not show you the knife it keeps under its pillow. It shows you its empty hands and hopes you will go away. On the dome, a new communication window opened. The face that appeared was Captain Lee Dae-Hyan, but he was not on the bridge of the Sentinel. The background behind him was immense. A command center that stretched back into a vaulted ceiling, crisscrossed with gantries and glowing tactical displays. Crew members, tiny as ants at that distance, moved with purpose. His voice, when it spoke, was amplified through the chamber system. Calm and clear. "Ambassador Var, Special Envoy Kim, this is Captain Lee Dae-Hyan of the United Nations Starship Monsu. We apologize for our late arrival. Final calibrations of our long-range displacement drive took longer than anticipated." Var stared, his mind visibly struggling to process. "Captain Lee? You are not on the Sentinel?" "The Sentinel is a fine patrol craft, Ambassador," Dae-Hyan said, a hint of something like dryness in his tone. "My posting was transferred. The Monsu requires a certain perspective." The scale of the deception began to dawn on Var. The humans had not just hidden a ship. They had hidden their real commander on their real ship, while leading him to believe the Sentinel was their peak. It was a performance, and he had been the only audience. "This is an act of profound bad faith," Var said, his voice regaining some strength, colored now with outrage. "To conceal a weapon of this magnitude during diplomatic... A weapon?" Jia interrupted, her voice still quiet, but now cutting through his like a knife. "Who spoke of weapons, Ambassador? You are the one who has spoken of nothing but our fears, our wars, our need for your protection. The Monsu is not a weapon. It is a foundation." She gestured toward the dome, with the ship hung like a new moon. "It is a mobile city, a deep space research hub, a long-term colony seed. It carries families, Ambassador, schools, farms under artificial suns. It is built not for war, but for endurance, to ensure that no matter what happens to Earth, humanity continues. You see a gun, Because you have been looking for one. We built an ark. The truth of her words, or at least the possibility of them, hit Var like a physical blow. He looked back at the ship. Seen through that lens, the structures on its spine could be habitat modules. The vast bays could hold construction gear, not just fighters. The sheer size spoke of a desire not to conquer, but to survive independently forever. You built this. In secret, Var managed. We built it, Jia said, because the universe is dark, and we did not know who or what was in it. We hoped for friends. We prepared for anything else. You arrived offering a sheltered harbor. But humanity has spent its entire history looking at the ocean and dreaming of building its own ship. Not to dock in someone else's port, but to sail on its own. Captain Lee's voice returned. The Mansu is currently running all systems at standby levels. We are monitoring this frequency for further diplomatic instruction. The unspoken meaning was clear. We are here. We are listening. The situation has changed. Var's mind raced. The treaty on the table was now meaningless. It was a document for a different, weaker Earth. This Earth, the one that built silent leviathans behind its moon, was not a child. It was an entirely different species than the one he had assessed. They were not reckless. They were patient, not impulsive. They were devastatingly long-term in their thinking. Their paranoia had birthed not just a warship, but a new branch of their civilization. He looked from Jia's unreadable face to the monstrous, beautiful, terrifying arc on the screen. The power dynamic in the room had not just shifted. It had been inverted. He had come to offer guidance to a primitive people. He now stood in the shadow of their greatest achievement, an achievement they had seen, no need to mention until this exact, perfect moment. The polite, condescending script was gone. Everything was gone except the new, harsh reality hanging in the space near Neptune. You have redefined the terms of this discussion, Var said finally, his voice hollow. No, Ambassador, Jia said, offering a small, cold smile. You defined them. You defined us as a protectorate. We are simply presenting a more complete picture. The terms were always wrong because the understanding was wrong. Shall we, she gestured to the table with its now irrelevant data terminal, begin a new discussion? Perhaps starting with mutual introductions as equals? She did not move. She waited. The ball, the entire playing field, was now in his court. The progenitor's grace, once a symbol of infinite superiority, now felt like a delicate soap bubble next to a steel wall. The Mansu did not glare. It did not threaten. It simply was. Its presence asked the only question that mattered now. What do you have to offer to a people who can build this? Ambassador Kalen Var, diplomat of the Galactic Accord, looked at the arc of humanity, and for the first time in his long career, he had absolutely no idea what to say next. The shuttle, named Harmony, was a beautiful craft. It was built for diplomacy, not for war. Its lines were smooth, its interior quiet and comfortable, with soft lighting and seats that molded to the body. Special Envoy Kim Jia sat by a viewport, watching the Earth shrink away into a beautiful blue jewel. It looked fragile from here. Dr. Choi Yun-ji sat across from her fingers flying over a data slate. Final linguistic checks, Yun-ji murmured. The Accord's formal agreement text has 17 subtle conditional clauses. They all favor their oversight. I've prepared some gentle pushback points on 3 of them. Good, Gia said, her voice distant. We'll need to seem thorough. Concerned, but ultimately agreeable. Ahead of them, visible through the forward cockpit door, was the blocky, sturdy shape of the UNSC Sentinel. It was their escort. Compared to the progenitor's grace, it looked like a rough stone next to a polished diamond. But it was theirs. Commander Park Ji-hoon, the Sentinel's tactical officer, had come aboard the shuttle as a liaison. He stood near the cockpit, his posture straight, his eyes constantly moving, checking readouts. "Everything is nominal, Envoy," Park said, catching her look. "The Sentinel is leading us on the calculated path. The Accord ship is already at the rendezvous point. They are waiting." "Of course they are," Jia said softly. The journey to the edge of the solar system was quiet. There was little to see but stars and the distant, faint speck of Neptune, a pale blue dot. It was a vast, empty stage. Jia spent the time reviewing the Accord's promises. Clean energy grids, medical pods that could regenerate tissue, access to a network of knowledge spanning millennia. It was a glittering prize. All it cost was the soul of their independence. All it required was to admit they were not yet adults. She thought about Ambassador Var's calm, certain face. He was not a villain. He believed he was saving them. That was the hardest part. A bully you could hate, a benefactor who saw your future as something they needed to manage, was far more dangerous. Approaching the rendezvous coordinates, the shuttle pilot's voice came over the speaker. "The progenitor's grace is on visual." Jia moved to the forward viewport. There it was. The alien ship hung in the void near Neptune, its bioluminescent hull glowing softly against the deep black and the pale blue of the gas giant. It was a vision of serene, advanced power. It made the approaching Sentinel look like a delivery truck. A communication channel chirped open. Ambassador Var's face appeared on the screen in the shuttle's cabin. He was smiling. "Special Envoy Kim, welcome. The Sentinel may hold position there. Please bring your shuttle into our main hangar bay. We have prepared a suitable environment for our signing ceremony." Ji nodded. "Thank you, Ambassador. We are proceeding as directed." The Sentinel slowed to a relative stop, a loyal guard dog told to stay. The shuttle Harmony drifted forward alone, a tiny, elegant bird flying towards a glowing palace. Jia felt a knot tighten in her stomach. This was it. They were going inside the beast's mouth. They would be surrounded by alien technology, alien might. Their only shield was politeness. The hangar bay of the progenitor's grace was breathtaking. It was vast and airy, filled with a light that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. The air smelled faintly of ozone and something sweet, like night-blooming flowers. There was no noise, only a profound, peaceful silence. A delegation of Accord beings awaited them. Ambassador Var at the front. "Welcome aboard," Var said, his arms open in a gesture of inclusion. "This is a moment of historic peace." The tour was a masterclass in subtle pressure. They were shown gardens with plants from 100 worlds, libraries that held data slates containing entire histories, viewing galleries that showed the harmony of the Accord fleet's sleek, beautiful ships moving in perfect unison. Everything spoke of order, of a peace that was not just the absence of war, but a polished, finished product. Finally, they were led to the signing chamber. It was a circular room with a dome that showed a magnified view of space. Neptune filled half the view, majestic and calm. A table of some translucent stone-like material stood in the center. Upon it rested a single data terminal, glowing softly. The agreement was ready. "All that remains," Var said, his voice warm in the quiet room, "is the formal acknowledgement. A fingerprint, a retinal scan for your records. A symbol of your world's conscious choice to step into the light of community." Jia stepped forward. Her team stood behind her. She looked at the terminal. She looked at Var's expectant, kindly face. This was the moment they expected her to hesitate, to ask for small changes, to reveal the nervousness of a child being offered a responsibility they feared. She opened her mouth to speak, to play her part, to ask for the agreed-upon period of reflection. A sharp Urgent chirp came from Commander Park Ji-hoon's wristcom. It was a human device, and its sound was harsh and jarring in the serene alien chamber. All eyes turned to him. His face, normally so controlled, had gone pale. He was staring at a small private screen on the device. He looked up, his eyes finding GA's. There was a shock in them, but beneath it, a fierce, blazing pride. He didn't speak. He simply gave her a sharp, almost imperceptible nod. On the main viewing dome of the chamber, where Neptune hung, a new alert flashed silently in Accord script. A sensor officer's voice, confused and tense, came over the ship's internal address system in their own language, but the translators in the room picked it up a second later. Ambassador. An unscheduled mass displacement. Extreme scale. Bearing from the inner system. It is. It is not one of ours. Var's calm smile faltered for a split second. A human vessel? One of their long-range miners, perhaps. Negative. The energy signature is massive, beyond any known human designation. The mass is reading at 8 kilotons? That cannot be correct. Sensors are recalibrating. Var turned to Jia, his polite mask back in place, but his eyes were sharper now. It seems you have a stray ship, special envoy. A construction vessel, maybe? Our space lanes must be kept clear. Jia allowed herself a small, confused frown, mirroring his own pretense. I have no information about this, Ambassador. Our fleet registry is with you. All other ships should be in dock. Before Var could reply, the sensor officer's voice came again, this time tinged with something that sounded like fear. Ambassador, the displacement is stabilizing. An object is materializing. It is a ship. Visual coming online. On the Great Dome, the image of Neptune shimmered and was replaced by a live sensor feed. At first, there was just a distortion, a ripple in space as if the universe itself was bending. Then, a shape began to push its way into reality, but it did not slide gracefully like the Accord ship. It emerged. It was a brutal, angular shape of dark gray metal, scarred with the micro-impacts of test runs. Light gleamed along its edges, not from gentle bioluminescence, but from the hard, bright glow of 1,000-meter-long banks of industrial-grade plasma lamps. It had a prow like a blunt axe head, and running down its spine were structures that looked like armored cities. It was covered in weapon batteries, communication spires, and shield projectors so large they were visible as distinct humps on its whole dot. It kept coming and coming and coming. It was not just larger than the progenitor's grace. It was larger than anything the Accord, Diplomats had ever seen outside of a space dock. It was not a ship. It was a moving fortress. A mountain that had learned to fly. The silence in the signing chamber was no longer peaceful. It was stunned, heavy, and cold. The colossal ship finished its translation into real space. It hung there, dominating the view, blocking the light from distant stars. Its sheer, silent presence was a physical force. On its flank, in simple, bold human lettering, was a name, Uns Miasu. Ambassador Var stood frozen, his iridescent skin seeming to have lost its light. He stared at the monstrosity on the screen, his mouth slightly open. All his calm, all his certainty had been blasted away. He slowly turned his head to look at Kim Ji-Ah. Her face was no longer that of a grateful supplicant. All polite confusion had vanished. Her expression was calm, composed, and as hard as the metal of the ship now filling the sky. She met his gaze and raised a single eyebrow. Just a fraction. The message was clear, without a single word being spoken. You were saying something about our stray ship, Ambassador? The silence in the secure briefing room was heavier than the vacuum outside. The large, polished table reflected the grim faces of Earth's Unified Security Council. Special Envoy Kim Jia stood at one end, the data from the Accord's presentation still glowing faintly on the wall screens behind her. The images of perfect alien worlds now felt like a taunt. "A protectorate," said Councilman Schmidt, his voice tight. "It is a polite word for a cage." "They're offering us the stars," countered another, her fingers tapping nervously on the table. "Medicine that could cure cancer. Energy that could clean our atmosphere. All they ask is that we behave." Captain Lee De-Hyan's face on the central view screen was a study in controlled stillness. The feed from the UNSC Sentinel was crisp. "They ask for our sovereignty," he said, his tone even and logical. "They ask for our right to defend ourselves independently." Their scans of my ship, the Sentinel, were not subtle. I could feel them. It was like being looked at by someone who finds you mildly interesting, like an insect under a glass. Jia finally spoke. "Dr. Choi, your analysis of their cultural subtext?" Yoonji pushed her glasses up, opening her tablet. "The language in the treaty is consistent across all translations. Words like guidance, maturity, peacekeeping. There is a paternalistic pattern. Their history, as they selectively presented it, shows a pattern of integrating younger species after periods of internal conflict. They see our historical wars not as tragedies, but as symptoms of a developmental stage. To them, we are not yet adults." "So this is not malice," said Schmidt. "No," Jia answered. "It is something more dangerous. It is certainty. They are certain they are right. They are certain we need them. That certainty is their greatest strength, and it might be their only blind spot." The meeting dissolved into a chatter of strategy legal loopholes, potential counteroffers, appeals to different factions within the Accord. Jia listened, but her mind was elsewhere. She was thinking about the dinner. Later, in the ambassador's private quarters on the platform, the atmosphere was different. It was not a meeting of states, but a personal dinner. Ambassador Kalen Var had requested it. "Formalities are necessary for the crowd," he had said, his voice warm through the communicator. "But true understanding is built between individuals." The room was set for two. The food was simple broiled fish, rice, an assortment of seasoned vegetables. Human food prepared perfectly. Var sat with an easy grace, his robes pooling around him. He used the provided utensils with a curious delicacy. "Your world's flavors are vibrant," he noted, taking a small bite. "A complexity born of struggle, perhaps. The soil that fights yields the most interesting fruit. We have found strength in adversity." Jia agreed, sipping her tea. "A noble trait, but one that can become a trap." Var set his chopsticks down. "May I speak plainly, Special Envoy? Without the burden of our official roles? Please. We have watched your species for some time. Your leap from your atmosphere to this station in less than a century of your years is remarkable. Truly, it is a burst of frantic energy. But energy, unchecked, can be destructive. You have turned that energy on yourselves repeatedly. You see the scars on your planet from space, the chemical imbalances in your oceans, the frantic, buzzing networks of communication filled with as much fear as hope." He leaned forward, his iridescent skin catching the soft light. His dark eyes were deep and sincere. "The Accord is not a chain. It is a harbor. We offer calm waters. You would not have to spend your brilliance, your passion, on building warships and watching your neighbors with suspicion. You could build wonders. You could cure your sick, clean your world, and reach for the stars without looking over your shoulder. The peace we offer is not passive. It is a tool, the greatest tool a civilization can possess." Jia met his gaze. "It is a generous vision, but peace enforced by another is not peace. It is quiet." Var's smile was gentle, patient. A child believes a parent's rules are oppression. Only later does it understand they were shields. Your fleet, for example. He gestured vaguely toward the window, where the blocky shape of the Sentinel was just visible. A sturdy design, practical, but you see, in the Accord, such purely martial vessels are not necessary. Our security is collective. A single ship from a member world is a symbol of that united strength. Your Sentinel is a symbol of lonely fear. We can free you from that fear. The words were velvet, but their meaning was iron. He had just called humanity a frightened child, its ships toys of paranoia. Jia felt a hot spark of defiance in her chest, but she cooled it. This was information. You speak of our history of conflict, she said, her voice neutral. Does the Accord have no such history? Oh, we do, Var said, sitting back. It is a dark, ancient history. Millennia of war and pain. That is precisely why we formed the Accord. To ensure no young species must endure that same long, bloody road. We offer you a shortcut, a way to avoid our old mistakes. Why should you suffer as we did when we can lift you past it? The arrogance of it was breathtaking. They were not hiding their past. They were using it as a badge of superior experience. We were once as savage as you, but we grew up. Now let us manage your growth back in her own quarters. Jia contacted De Haiyan on a secure line. His face appeared, looking tired. He as good as called the Sentinel a primitive scow, she said quietly. A flicker of anger crossed De Haiyan's stoic face. I know, their scans were comprehensive. They know its engine output, its weapon yields, its shield density. To them, it is a simple math problem. They believe they have solved us. Do we have anything they haven't seen? De Haiyan was silent for a long moment. Not in this fleet. The Sentinel and her sisters are what they seem. Honest ships, built for the threats we knew. He paused. But the Project Envoy, it was built for the threats we couldn't imagine. The ones that might come from out there. Is it ready? The last report from the lunar shipyards was 48 hours ago. The word was operational. They are waiting for the final command. Jia looked at the countdown on her wall. The formal signing ceremony was set for 24 hours from now at the neutral rendezvous point near Neptune. The Accord expected them to arrive in a diplomatic shuttle, escorted by the Sentinel, a symbol of their current, manageable strength. They have seen our past, Jia said, more to herself than to De Haiyan. They have audited our present. They believe they can predict our future. They think our ambition is limited to joining their club. She looked at the captain. We must not show our hand early. The Sentinel will escort us as planned. We will be the perfect, slightly overwhelmed, grateful applicants. We will let them feel their certainty. And then? De Haiyan asked. And then, Jia said, a cold, hard shape forming in her mind. We introduce them to a human concept they have not considered. We show them that when humanity feels cornered, when we are patronized and looked down upon, we do not just submit or rage. We dig. We plan. We build in secret. Not just a bigger gun. A different kind of answer altogether. She ended the call. The plan was madness. A single ship, even a large one, could not stand against a galactic union. But this was not about fighting a union. This was about changing a conversation. The Accord had started this dialogue from a position of unshakable height. To be heard, humanity did not need to climb up to them. It needed to shift the very ground beneath their feet. The final hours before departure were a blur of formalities. Jia and her team, including Dr. Choi Yun-ji, packed data slates and formal attire. They practiced polite phrases of gratitude and hesitant agreement. They would go to Neptune. They would listen to the final, generous terms, and they would ask for a small period of reflection. It was a week, predictable move. It was exactly what the Accord expected from a nervous, divided planet Dot. As Jia boarded the sleek diplomatic shuttle, she took one last look at the orbital platform. Somewhere in a hidden dock, Captain Li Dehyan was boarding the Sentinel. And behind the moon, in the dark, silent shipyards where no alien scans had ever reached, something that was not a symbol of fear, but a statement of sheer, unimaginable will, was powering up its engines for the first time. The view from the United Nations orbital platform was always impressive, but today it held a new kind of magic. Special Envoy Kim Jia stood before the thick observation window, her hands clasped neatly behind her back. Below, the blue and white marble of Earth turned slowly. Around it, the familiar lights of human satellites and stations winked against the black velvet of space. But her eyes were fixed on a new point of light, one that moved with a silent, elegant purpose. It was called the Progenitor's Grace. The name had been sent ahead in a data packet of stunning clarity. The ship itself was like a jewel. It had no sharp corners. Its hull was a smooth, organic curve that seemed to drink in the starlight and emit its own soft, pearlescent glow. It moved without visible engines, without fire or thrust. It simply was, and then it was somewhere else, a fish swimming gracefully through the void. To Jia, it looked less like a machine and more like a living piece of art, a statement. They are as beautiful as they are advanced. A voice murmured beside her. Dr. Choi Yoonji adjusted her glasses. Her tablet held tightly. Her face was a mask of professional calm, but Jia could see the excited scientist underneath. Initial scans suggest a bio-integrated hull. The luminescence isn't decorative. It's likely a form of energy dispersion or communication. No weapon ports are visible, but that means nothing. It means everything, Yoonji, Jia replied softly, her voice barely above a whisper. It's a diplomatic ship. They want us to see their beauty, their refinement. They want us to feel small. She turned from the window. The reception hall of the orbital platform had been prepared with immense care. It was a blend of human culture's art from across continents, music that was soft and international, scents of food that were inviting, not challenging. The air hummed with quiet tension. Officials in formal attire moved with practiced smiles. Cameras were positioned, but only a few by strict agreement. This first contact was to be intimate, controlled. The arrival procedure was flawless. A shuttle, as sleek and graceful as the mothership, detached and glided into the main docking bay without a sound. The doors opened, and there was no steam, no dramatic hiss. A ramp extended, and the Galactic Accord delegation descended. Ambassador Kalen Var led them. He was tall, taller than any human in the room, with long limbs that moved with an unhurried, fluid grace. His skin was the most striking feature. It held a subtle iridescence, like the inside of an abalone shell, shifting from silver to pale blue in the light. His eyes were large, dark, and profoundly calm. He wore simple, draped robes of a fabric that seemed to move on its own. He looked ancient, wise, and utterly serene. Behind him were others of his kind, along with a few different species, all moving with the same quiet assurance. The greetings were translated through small devices they wore. The words were perfect, the accents neutral. Special Envoy Kim, Var said, his voice a soft, melodious baritone. On behalf of the Galactic Accord, we bring you greetings. Your world is as vibrant as our long-range scan suggested. Welcome to Earth, Ambassador Var, Jia said, offering a bow of her head, a gesture he mirrored perfectly. We are honored by your visit. We hope your journey was peaceful. Space is vast, but it holds a deep peace for those who know how to listen, Var replied. His smile was warm, but it didn't quite reach those calm, observing eyes. We have listened for your songs for many cycles. We are eager to hear them in person. The tour began. The Accord diplomats were polite, asking thoughtful questions about the station's life support, about Earth's unified government, about art and philosophy. They praised human ingenuity. They tasted the offered food with delicate appreciation. They were, in every measurable way, perfect guests. The formal presentation took place in the platform's main auditorium. Var stood before a holographic projector that put their own technology to shame. With a wave of his hand, he conjured images of worlds so breathtakingly beautiful they looked like dreams. Emerald cities built into forests without cutting a single tree. Rivers that glowed with gentle light. Beings of different shapes and forms, working, creating, living in apparent harmony. The Galactic Accord is not an empire, Var explained, the images swirling behind him. It is a union, a family. We have weathered the storms of galactic history together. We share knowledge, culture, and protection. We saw the light of your civilization, your rapid, if energetic, development, and we believed you were ready to be welcomed. The terms were presented next. A scroll of light text appeared in the air, translated into multiple Earth languages. It spoke of protectorate status, of guided integration. The Accord would provide advanced medical technology, clean energy solutions, and insights into cosmic science. In return, Earth would adopt Accord standards, open its markets, and most importantly, integrate its planetary defense forces into the Accord's peacekeeping fleet. Human military expansion would be paused for review. It is for stability, Var said gently, his eyes sweeping the room of human dignitaries. Young species, full of fire and passion, often turn that energy inward. We see the scars on your world from orbit. The history in your data networks is turbulent. We can help you move beyond that. We can offer you the safety of the whole, so you may focus on growing into your potential. In the front row, Jia listened, her face a placid lake. Inside, her mind raced. The offer was velvet-covered steel. The praise was genuine, but the underlying message was crystal clear. You are children. You are dangerous to yourselves. We will be your parents. After the presentation, there was a smaller, more intimate dinner. Var sat beside Jia. Your people have a remarkable resilience, he said, sipping a glass of water. To have achieved so much, so quickly, with such limited resources. It is admirable. Necessity is a powerful teacher, Ambassador. Jia replied, sampling a piece of fruit. Indeed. But once necessity is removed, what then? That is where a guiding hand is most useful. He paused. We noted the many orbital defense platforms, the numerous small warships. A species so eager to defend itself often has much it fears, both inside and out. Jia met his gaze. Or much it values, and wishes to keep safe on its own terms. Var's smile widened, a patronizing thing, a noble sentiment. But the universe is large, and not all neighbors are as understanding as the Accord. Our peace is hard won. We extend its shelter to you. Later, in the secure briefing room deep within the platform, the Human Council gathered. The mood was grim. Their colonizers with better manners. A European ambassador grumbled. G- shook her head. No, it's subtler. They don't want our land or our labor. They want our future. They want to fold our story into theirs, on their terms. Their assessment of us is clinical and complete. They see our wars, our pollution, our factionalism. They see a clever, violent child who needs to be put in a safe playpen. On a view screen, the face of Captain Lee Daehyun appeared. His cruiser, the UNSC Sentinel, was docked on the other side of the platform. Their ship's passive scans are constant, he reported, his voice steady. They are mapping every defense grid, every power signature on the planet and around it. It's not hostile. It's analytical. Like a doctor taking notes. Can we stop the scans? Someone asked. We could try, Aion said. But that would be a hostile act. And against that technology? It would be like throwing a rock at a tank. They are showing us their grace, but also their unspoken strength. Their ship is a message. We are everything you are not. Jia leaned forward. So we must show them something they have not calculated for. They have seen our history. They have seen our present. We must control what they see of our future. She looked at De Hayan. Captain, is the rendezvous point confirmed? Neptune's orbital lane. In 48 hours. The Sentinel will escort the diplomatic shuttle. Good, Jia said. She looked at the faces around the table, human faces full of worry and defiance. We will be perfectly courteous. We will listen to every word. We will thank them for their generous offer. And then we will go to their neutral meeting place, and we will show them that humanity builds more than just guns and fences. Sometimes, when a child is left alone in the dark for too long, it doesn't just build a candle. It forges a sun, just to feel safe. She dismissed the meeting. Later, alone in her quarters, she looked out once more at the beautiful, menacing jewel of the progenitor's grace, hanging beside the rough, practical moon. The first move was over. The aliens had played their hand with perfect, polite superiority. Now it was humanity's turn. But the card they would play wasn't in the deck the Accord had counted. It was still in the shipyards, hidden behind the moon, waiting for its curtain call.